I'm 83 years old, and I need to say something that might make you uncomfortable. I need to say it right up front before you click away and tell yourself you'll come back later. You think you have time. You think because you're still driving, still cooking, still paying your own bills, you've got a long runway. You think 60 is the new 40. Honestly, that's the sweetest lie we tell ourselves because it keeps us calm. But I've learned this the hard way. Your 60s and 70s aren't a reward. They're a window, and that window closes faster than anyone warns you. I buried my husband, Vincent, 15 years ago after 46 years of marriage. I've watched friends disappear from my address book one funeral at a time. I've laid on my own living room floor for 11 hours after a fall, listening to my phone ring across the room like it was on another planet. And I've had all 5 of my adult children, David, Linda, Sarah, Emma, and Michael, look me in the eye like I was a problem to be managed. And look, I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I'm telling you because I wish someone had frightened me sooner. I need you to understand something before I continue. I'm not one of those people who's going to sit here and pretend I figured it all out. I didn't. I made mistakes that cost me time, dignity, and relationships I can't get back the way they used to be. I'm still learning. I'm still adjusting. But I've survived enough now that I can tell you the truth without flinching. There are 10 things I need to tell you, 10 lessons I wish I'd learned when I was in my 50s and 60s, when my knees still worked and my pride still ran the show. And I'm saving the heaviest one for the end, because if I'd understood it earlier, it would have changed everything. Lesson 1. My body changed whether I was ready or not, and strength didn't come back just because I wanted it to. When I was 62, I could take my laundry basket down the basement stairs with one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. I could kneel in the garden and stand back up without thinking about it. I could hop up on a chair to reach a high shelf. I didn't call it balance. I called it normal. And what I didn't understand back then was that normal is something you lose in inches, not all at once. In inches you ignore. By 70, my lower back complained every morning like an old neighbor banging on the wall. By 75, I started holding on to the banister like it was a friend. By 80, I didn't like leaving the house after dark because my eyes weren't what they were, and my confidence wasn't either. Pay attention to this detail because it's going to matter later. I kept telling myself I'd start taking care of my legs after the holidays, after the trip, after my next checkup. I always had an after. Then one afternoon, I was alone in my house and I turned too quickly. My foot caught the edge of a rug I'd had for years, and I went down. Not dramatic, not like on television, just a sudden, stupid slip and the hard fact of the floor. And that's when everything fell apart. I tried to push up with my arms, but my shoulders screamed. I tried to roll, but my hip wouldn't cooperate. I could see the edge of the couch like it was 3 feet away, and I couldn't reach it. My phone was on the table. I could hear it when it lit up. I could hear calls coming in, but I couldn't get there. You're not ready for what comes next. I stayed there for 11 hours. I peed on myself. I got cold. Then I got hot. Then everything went quiet inside me, like my body decided to conserve whatever it could. I was ashamed. I was scared. I felt like a burden before anyone even found me. And here's the thing. I used to think falls were accidents that happened to other people. But a fall is also a bill. It's the bill you pay for every year you didn't build strength when you could. Lesson 2. I needed more friends than I thought, and I needed to keep making them even when I felt silly. When Vincent was alive, he was my built-in witness. He remembered things with me. He knew the names behind the stories. When he died, I assumed my children would fill that space. They couldn't. They have their own lives, and they should. I had a small circle of women for years. Coffee, church events, birthdays, potlucks, the kind of friendships where you know which one likes extra lemon in her tea. One by one, those women disappeared. Some moved near their children. Some got sick. Some just stopped calling. And then I'd hear later, "Oh, did you hear? She passed." You know what surprised me the most? How quickly a life can vanish from your daily world. One month you're exchanging recipes, and the next month you're staring at a sympathy card and trying to remember the last time you laughed together. I didn't know it at the time, but I was depending on a shrinking circle and calling it security. And when that circle shrank down to almost nothing, the loneliness wasn't poetic. It was practical. It was the quiet of a phone that doesn't ring. It was eating soup for dinner because it didn't feel worth cooking anything else. So I started talking to people again, at the library, in the grocery store, in the little community class at the senior center that I swore I'd never attend because I wasn't that old. And yes, it felt awkward, but I'd rather feel awkward than invisible. Lesson 3. I should have had the ugly conversations early about death, money, and what I wanted before anyone was in a crisis. Let me explain. I watched my own mother decline, and I watched my siblings argue because nobody knew what she wanted. I told myself I'd never do that to my kids, and then I almost did. Because I didn't want to sit at my dining room table and say, "Here's my will, here's the account information, here's what I want if I can't speak for myself." I didn't want to see their faces. I didn't want them to look at me like I was already gone. But death doesn't wait for your comfort, and neither does illness. If you wait until you're sick, you're not sparing them. You're handing them a mess with a bow on it. When I finally sat David and Linda down, my hands were shaking. I tried to make jokes. I kept saying, "Well, someday, far from now." And David, my practical one, said, "Mom, just tell us. We can handle it." Linda looked like she wanted to cry, but she nodded. That conversation didn't kill me. It steadied me, and it saved them from guessing later. Lesson 4. Retirement didn't save me. It exposed me. Vincent used to tease me because I always had lists. I had lists for groceries, lists for Christmas, lists for chores. I liked feeling useful. Then Vincent retired, and later, when he died, my whole structure died with him. I thought freedom would feel like a vacation. It didn't. It felt like being unneeded. It felt like waking up with nowhere I had to be and realizing that nowhere can swallow a day whole. And this is where the story gets heavy, because when I started feeling useless, I started clinging to my children. Honestly, I became that mother who calls too much. I didn't think I was being needy. I told myself I was checking in, but I was trying to plug a hole in my life with their attention. I'd call Sarah to remind her about something she already knew. I'd call Emma to suggest a doctor for the kids when she hadn't asked. I'd call Michael with a news story just to hear a voice. And sometimes I'd call and talk too long, and I'd hear the little pause on the other end. The patience thinning. Wait, it gets worse. I convinced myself that if I just stayed involved enough, they'd never leave me behind. I didn't see that I was pushing them away. Lesson 5. I had less time with Vincent than I thought, and the healthiest years were fewer than I imagined. 46 years sounds like a lot, and it was. But when I look back, I see chunks, not a smooth line. The early years were building: work, children, bills. We were tired. We were in love, but we were tired. The middle years had rough patches. We didn't always treat each other gently. We got through it, but it took work. And then, when we finally had the kind of calm marriage I thought people had all along, the clock was already running faster. His knees went. My energy dipped. Our world got smaller without us deciding it. I wish I'd said yes more. I wish I'd taken more pictures. I wish I'd sat on the porch with him more evenings instead of cleaning a kitchen that could have waited. Lesson 6. I should have forgiven sooner, because later doesn't always come. I held a grudge once that lasted years. I was right, too. That's the terrible part. I was right, and it didn't matter. Someone died before we fixed it. I'm not giving you details to entertain you. I'm telling you because I still feel that regret in my stomach when I think about it. Being right is cold comfort when you can't hear a voice again. If you're holding something tight in your fists right now, ask yourself what it's costing you. Pride is expensive. Lesson 7. My adult children didn't need my advice. They needed my presence. This one bruised my ego. I raised 5 children. I ran a household. I knew how life worked. So when they struggled, I tried to help by telling them what to do. And what I didn't understand back then was that advice can sound like criticism when it isn't invited. One night, Linda snapped at me on the phone. She said, "Mom, I didn't call to be evaluated. I called because I'm tired." I went quiet. My stomach dropped. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say, "I'm only trying to help." But I heard myself. I heard the tone I used, like a supervisor, not like a mother. So I learned to listen. I learned to ask, "Do you want my thoughts, or do you just want me here with you?" That question saved more conversations than any clever advice I ever gave. And still, even with that effort, my relationships took hits. After my fall, when I couldn't hide how vulnerable I was, the whole family dynamic changed. After that night on the floor, I started writing things down, just for me. Little rules I made for myself so it wouldn't happen again. How to set up my house, who to call first, what to keep by the bed. I didn't think anything of it. It was my granddaughter Claire who found the notebook months later and told me other women needed to read what I'd written. She's the one who put it online. She called it The Ultimate Guide to Freedom. I still feel strange about it, honestly, but that's a story for the end of this video. Lesson 8. I had to write things down because my memory wasn't loyal. People don't like admitting this. They think it means they're losing it. Here's the thing. Forgetting is part of living long enough. I forget why I walked into a room. I forget what day it is without checking. I forget names that used to be easy. And the scary part isn't the forgetting. It's the moment you realize you forgot. So I started keeping lists. Birthdays, medications, emergency numbers, little notes to myself like I'm my own assistant. And I started writing down stories too, because I don't want my grandchildren to only remember me as old. I want them to know I was once a young woman who danced in the kitchen with Vincent while the roast burned. I want them to know I was stubborn at 30, and I'm stubborn now, and sometimes that stubbornness saved me. Lesson 9. I was scared, and courage was doing it anyway. I spent years pretending I wasn't afraid of getting older. I'd laugh when people talked about nursing homes. I'd say, "Oh, they'll have to drag me out of here." And then they tried. After my fall, all 5 children gathered in my living room like it was an intervention. David had brochures. Linda had statistics. Sarah talked about safety. Emma looked guilty. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. David said, "Mom, this can't happen again." Linda said, "We can't live like this, waiting for the phone to ring." Sarah said, "Just try a facility for a little while." I felt completely invisible, like my whole life was reduced to a risk assessment. I did try it. Meadowbrook, 30 days. That was the deal. Just to recover, they said. Pay attention to this detail because it's going to matter later. The first night at Meadowbrook, I asked for an extra blanket and the aide said, "We'll see," and never came back. That's when I knew. I wasn't a person there. I was a task. I cried in the bathroom so nobody would see. I was ashamed. I wanted to give up. And then I heard Vincent in my head. His steady voice from years of fixing broken things saying, "Laura, you don't wait for someone to hand you your life. You take it back." So I did. I called Claire. I told her, "I need out." I worked the phones. I arranged what I needed. I made my house safer. I swallowed my pride and accepted certain help on my terms. And I came home. Lesson 10. Time goes faster at the end, and if you don't pay attention, you'll wake up and realize years are gone. I'm telling you, I blinked and I was 70. I blinked and Vincent had been gone a decade. I blinked and my children were older than I felt inside. When you're young, everything is new, so time feels wide. When you're old, you've seen so many seasons that they blur. The holidays come and go like weather. And if you're not careful, you live on autopilot and call it getting through. And look, I'm not saying you need to squeeze every moment like it's a performance. I'm saying you need to notice your life while it's happening. Notice your strength. Notice your friendships. Notice your choices. Because you don't get a refund. Every night before I sleep, I talk to Vincent. I tell him what I cooked. I tell him if the neighbor's cat came by. I tell him I miss him. He doesn't answer. I keep talking anyway. That's what love turns into sometimes. A conversation with someone who's gone, and a promise to yourself that you'll keep living. So here's where I land, and I'm going to be plain about it. One of my children, David, this week, called me again and said, "Mom, you need to take that book down. People are watching your videos and talking about our family. It's embarrassing." And I sat right here at this table, and I stared at my hands, and I considered it. I'm 83. I'm not trying to be some internet person. I'm honestly embarrassed to be selling something at my age. I never wanted that. But I also keep getting letters from women who say, "I was about to give up," or "I thought I was useless," or "My kids are pressuring me and I didn't know I could say no." And that's why I've kept it up. The link to the Ultimate Guide to Freedom is in the pinned comment. I might take it down soon because I'm losing my nerve and because my son keeps pressing me. So if something I said today reached you, click it now. Don't wait. And if you're still here with me, leave a like. It tells me to keep going when I'm tired and I'm wondering if I should just go quiet. I read every comment you leave, every single one. So if you've been through something like this, tell me. I'm here. Subscribe if you want to keep talking. Every week I sit down at this table and I tell you the truth, because someone has to.